I made a bet about my marriage online, and the internet won. My name is Jade Ellington. I'm 27 years old. And I used to believe that love could be scripted, filtered, and scheduled like a post on my feed. On the day that belief finally died, I was standing in a white dress that didn't feel like mine, under lights that were too bright, with a phone in my hand that would not stop vibrating. While the florist fixed the last bouquet and my bridesmaids laughed in the next room. My wedding hashtag was trending worldwide. And yet the only thing I could hear was the silence coming from the man I was supposed to marry. I was never supposed to become that girl on the internet. The girl whose heartache people share in group chats with crying emojis and popcorn emojis. I started small, soft photos, pastel backgrounds, morning coffee, gym selfies, and get ready with me videos in my tiny apartment. Talked about skincare, about productivity, about self-love. I never meant to turn my relationship into content. But the algorithm loves stories, and nothing pulls people in more than a love story that looks perfect from far away. When my following exploded, my love life became the easiest, most profitable storyline to feed them. I met Ethan long before the brand deals and the ring lights. He was the kind of man who smiled with his whole face and listened with his whole body. He worked as a sound engineer, preferred hoodies over suits, and hated being photographed. When we started dating, he didn't have social media at all. I remember the first time I tried to tag him in a post and couldn't find his profile. He just shrugged and said he liked living off the grid. Back then I thought it was charming. Later, that distance, that refusal to play the game would become the crack that split everything open between us. My followers, however, fell in love with him quickly, without even seeing him properly. They saw his silhouette bringing me coffee in the background of a live. They heard his voice laughing off screen during a vlog. They watched my eyes light up whenever I said my boyfriend, and they filled in the missing pieces with their own fantasies. They called him Mr. Mystery in the comments. They wrote things like, "If he doesn't marry you, I will, and girl, lock that man down already." What began as a private reality slowly turned into a public expectation. When Ethan proposed, it was not content. It was clumsy and beautiful and almost entirely ruined by my instinct to reach for my phone. We were in our small kitchen, takeout boxes open, my hair in a messy bun, his hands shaking as he pulled a ring from his pocket. I remember the way his voice broke when he said, "Jade, I can't imagine my life without you." Before I could stop myself, my hand moved toward my phone on the counter. He saw it. Just a flicker in his eyes, a flash of hurt. "Please," he whispered, almost laughing, "just this once. Can it be just us?" I let the phone rest and said yes with tears in my eyes. But that quiet, intimate moment never stood a chance against what I did next. 2 hours later, the ring still warm on my finger, I staged the proposal again. This time with better lighting, makeup, and a second angle. I didn't show my followers that version, of course. I edited it to make it look like the real moment. I told myself it was harmless, that it was our story, just polished. The video went viral in less than 24 hours. Brands congratulated us. Strangers made edits with romantic music. People I hadn't spoken to in years reposted it with captions like, "True love still exists." Ethan watched it once, quietly, then set his phone down and asked, "Is this how it's going to be from now on?" I kissed his cheek and said, "It's just part of my job." I didn't see the way his shoulders tensed when I said that. As the months passed, my engagement rate climbed and my actual engagement began to crumble. The wedding became the biggest storyline of my career, the dress reveal, venue tours, Q&A sessions where followers asked about our first dance song, honeymoon plans, and whether we would live stream the ceremony. Companies sent free decorations, free invitations, free bridesmaid robes. Every choice became a poll. What dress should I wear? Should I walk down the aisle to a classic song or a modern one? Should we write our own vows? People voted, commented, argued. They acted like shareholders in our happiness, like the wedding was a movie they had funded and were now directing. Ethan went along with it at first. He loved me, and he saw how much this meant for my career. But every time I turned my phone toward him, some part of him retreated. He joked that he was just bad on camera, but I noticed how he stopped talking the second I hit record. When I asked him to do a couple challenge video, he smiled politely and said, "You know, that's not me, Jade." I laughed it off, told my followers he was shy, but inside, resentment started to coil between us. I felt like he wasn't supporting my dreams. He felt like I was auctioning off our intimacy to the highest-paying sponsor. Neither of us spoke those truths out loud. The bet started as a joke. At least, that's what I told myself. One night, during a live stream, someone commented, "I bet Ethan cries at the altar." Another replied, "I bet he faints LOL." The chat filled with bets and predictions, hearts and laughing emojis. I was tired, stressed, desperate to keep the energy up. And then the idea slipped out of my mouth with a bright smile that did not match the twist in my stomach. "Okay, let's make it official. I'm making a bet about my marriage online." Thousands of people watched as I declared that if Ethan did not show up on time for the wedding, I would have to post a mortifying, unfiltered crying video as a punishment. If he did, I promised a big romantic reveal, something cinematic and perfect. The chat exploded. People loved it. They started placing their own bets in the comments, using hashtags with our names and little wedding emojis. I ended the live with aching cheeks from smiling so hard. When it was over, the apartment went quiet, and the silence pressed against my eardrums. Ethan had been working late that night, so he didn't see it live. I lay in bed, scrolling through the replay, reading comments like, "This is the wedding of the year, and we feel like family FR." My heart raced. A small, scared voice inside me wondered if I'd gone too far. But the louder voice, the one trained by algorithms and sponsorship contracts, whispered, "This is engagement gold. You'd be stupid not to lean into it." The next morning, Ethan saw the edited clip on my page before he saw me. I was in the kitchen when I heard his footsteps stop halfway down the hall. There was a pause, then a low, disbelieving, "You've got to be kidding me." When he walked into the kitchen, his phone was still in his hand, my face frozen on the screen in that bright, performative smile. "Jade, what is this?" he asked. I wiped my hands on a towel and tried to keep my tone light. "It's just a playful thing for the followers. You know, like a challenge. It's good for the algorithm." His jaw clenched. "You made a bet about whether I show up to our wedding. With strangers. On the internet." For a second, guilt punched a hole straight through my chest. I saw it from his perspective. Our most sacred day turned into a public wager, our commitment reduced to content. But instead of apologizing, I defended myself. "It's not like that," I insisted. "They're invested in us anyway, this just makes it fun. It's marketing, Ethan. It'll make the wedding even more special." He stared at me as if trying to find the woman he proposed to in the girl arguing with him. "Does it need to be more special for them?" he asked quietly. "Or for us?" I didn't have an answer, so I rolled my eyes and walked away. That was the moment something inside him started to break, and something inside me refused to see it. The bet took on a life of its own. People started tagging betting apps in my comments as a joke. Fan pages created countdown timers and charts predicting what would happen. Some said he would cry, some said he would kiss me before the officiant even finished speaking, some said I'd be the one to run. Hidden among the playful comments, darker ones began to appear. "He looks uncomfortable in every video she posts. I don't think he really wants this. She's using him for content." I deleted those at first, pretending I hadn't seen them. But the words lingered anyway, hovering above us like storm clouds no filter could erase. Offline, Ethan grew quieter. He attended cake tastings, venue walkthroughs, rehearsal dinners, but he moved through them like a ghost. When vendors asked if we wanted a social media booth at the reception, "It's perfect for your brand, Jade," he would look at me, waiting for my answer. Every time I said yes, a little more light left his eyes. One night, 3 weeks before the wedding, I found him sitting on the couch in the dark, the TV off, the city lights spilling in through the window. "Do you ever wonder what this would look like if no one was watching?" he asked. I sat beside him, but I didn't touch him. "This is just how things are now," I said gently. "It's not bad. It's just modern." He nodded, but the way his shoulders slumped told me that in his heart he disagreed. The closer we got to the big day, the more I stopped seeing Ethan and started seeing numbers. Every fitting was an opportunity for a reel. Every tear was a thumbnail. I cried once, alone in the bridal shop bathroom, overwhelmed by the pressure, the expectations, the fear of disappointing millions of strangers who believed in our fairy tale. Instead of calling my fiancé, I filmed a soft-spoken, teary-eyed story talking about wedding stress and how love is messy but beautiful. It became one of my most saved posts. People said I was so real and so vulnerable. I stared at my reflection afterward, wondering when exactly I had learned to monetize my own breakdown. On the morning of the wedding, my notifications were a live wire buzzing in my palm. The hashtag was trending, brands were reposting my content, and my DMAs were full of people saying things like, "Can't wait to see if he shows," as if this were a season finale, not my life. My team, yes, I had a team by then, kept reminding me of the schedule. "We'll get a shot of you opening Ethan's letter," my manager said, handing me an envelope. "Make sure you read at least part of it on camera. People love that." My stomach twisted. "Did you read it?" I asked. She smiled apologetically. "Just the beginning. It's sweet. Very on brand." The words on brand burned my throat as I swallowed them. I sat by the window, ring light casting a soft glow on my skin, cameras waiting. My bridesmaids were in the next room, laughing, music playing, champagne glasses clinking. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, expecting to find something poetic and steady, something that would anchor me. Instead, I felt the floor tilt under me as I read the first line. "Jade, I don't know how to do this anymore." The rest of the letter blurred as my eyes filled with tears. Outside, somewhere beyond those walls, the man I loved was making a decision. Inside, my phone buzzed again, another notification from the bed I had created about my own happily ever after. The words in Ethan's letter swam in front of my eyes, refusing to settle into something I could understand. My chest rose and fell too fast, the lace of my dress tightening like a fist around my ribs. I blinked hard, trying to clear the burning in my vision. But no matter how many times I refocused, the first sentence stayed the same. "I don't know how to do this anymore." The room around me felt suddenly foreign, too bright, too stage, too full of things meant for strangers instead of for the man whose handwriting trembled across the page. I read the next line slowly, silently, as if saying it out loud might make it real. "I love you, Jade. I always have. But I'm losing you to a world I don't belong in. I don't know how to compete with millions of people who think they know us." A coldness spread through me, starting in my fingertips and crawling up my arms. I read on, each sentence hitting like a new fracture. I miss the girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder while we watched movies. I miss the version of us that lived in quiet rooms, not in curated frames. I miss being yours, not theirs. I swallowed hard, my throat tight, the taste of iron rising behind my tongue. My team outside was still arranging cameras and fixing props, unaware that the foundation of the day of the life I'd sold to the internet was slipping out from under me. My instinct was to hide the letter, to fold it, tuck it under a cushion, breathe deeply, reapply my lipstick, and go back to pretending everything was fine. Pretending had always been easy. Pretending paid my rent. Pretending built my following. But there was something raw and jagged in Ethan's words that ripped through every polished layer I had built around myself. When I reached the end of the letter, my hands shook so violently that the paper crinkled like foil. "I need time, Jade. I need to step away before the pieces of us disappear completely. I'm sorry this is happening today of all days. But if I walk into that ceremony like this, I'll be lying to you and to myself." My breath caught. A ringing filled my ears, drowning out the sound of distant music and laughter. The meaning pressed into me slowly, painfully. Ethan wasn't at the venue yet, and he wasn't coming until he decided whether he could still meet me at the altar with any kind of truth left in him. A single tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it quickly, terrified that someone might walk in and see the break in my expression. Cameras were waiting. The internet was waiting. Millions of people who thought today was their event were waiting. and the man at the center of it all was slipping away from me like water I couldn't hold. I stood up too fast, and the room tilted with me. I grabbed the edge of the vanity, breathing through the dizziness. My reflection stared back, soft curls, flawless skin, eyes ringed with gold shimmer, a perfect bride. But the girl in the mirror felt like someone else wearing my face. My chest tightened again, a painful reminder that the version of me Ethan loved wasn't this polished, filtered woman shaking in a bridal suite. It was the girl who burned pancakes on Sunday mornings. The girl who snorted when she laughed. The girl who didn't measure her worth in likes and comments. Somewhere along the way, I had traded her for this, an image that strangers adored and the man I loved could no longer recognize. A knock at the door startled me so hard the letter nearly slipped from my hands. "Jade?" my manager called. "It's time for the reaction shot. We want to get your first read of the letter. The lighting is perfect right now." A sharp pain shot through my heart. They didn't know. They didn't know this wasn't content. That the letter wasn't meant to be filmed, edited, scored with soft piano music. It was the cry of a man drowning under the weight of a life he never asked for. I pressed the letter to my chest. "Not yet," I managed, my voice thin. "Just give me 5 minutes." Footsteps retreated, muffled conversations drifting down the hallway. I closed my eyes and inhaled shakily. I needed to see him. I needed to understand. The bet, the stupid, immature, viral bet hovered in my mind like a ghost. Thousands of people were waiting to see if Ethan would show up on time. They didn't know he was deciding whether to show up at all. A wave of nausea crashed over me. I pressed a hand to my stomach, forcing myself to breathe. I couldn't fall apart yet. Not here. Not in a room full of cameras. I slipped out of the bridal suite through a side door that led to the back corridor of the venue. The air outside that room was cooler, dimmer, quieter. The hallway smelled faintly of flowers and rain. The storm clouds gathering outside casting a soft gray light through the high windows. I held the letter in my hand as I walked, each step echoing louder than I intended. My heels clicked in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. The venue staff nodded politely as I passed, unaware that the bride they were preparing to escort down the aisle was running from something she had created with her own hands. When I reached the entrance of the building, the air shifted. A breeze slipped in as someone opened the door, carrying the scent of wet pavement and something colder, fear maybe. I stepped outside, the world suddenly too large and too quiet. The sky was heavy, thick with the promise of rain. It felt fitting. I looked around, searching for Ethan's car, for his silhouette, for any sign that he was close. My heart raced painfully like it was trying to escape my chest. The letter shook in my hand. Then I saw him. He was standing alone under the awning near the parking lot, his suit jacket draped over one arm, his shoulders tense, his eyes fixed on the ground. He looked like a man carrying the weight of a decision he didn't want to make. For a moment I couldn't move. I just watched him, the man I loved, the man I had pushed into a spotlight that never belonged to him. I took a breath that felt like it scraped down my throat and stepped toward him, each step slower than the last. "Ethan." My voice cracked around his name. He looked up, startled, his eyes widening slightly when he saw me in my dress. For a moment, a softness flickered across his face, like a memory of us before everything got loud. Then it disappeared beneath something heavier. Regret, exhaustion, pain. "Jade," he said quietly, "you're not supposed to be out here." I held up the letter with trembling hands. "You weren't supposed to write this." The wind lifted the edges of the paper, tugging gently, like the universe wanted to read it too. Ethan exhaled shakily and ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to hurt you. But I couldn't walk into that ceremony pretending everything was okay." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" He looked at me with eyes that were heartbreakingly honest. "Because you don't hear me anymore, Jade. Not unless I speak in a way your followers can hear too." His words cut clean through me, a wound I couldn't hide behind filters or edits. The sky rumbled above us, the first drop of rain landing softly on my shoulder. I stepped closer, gripping the letter like a lifeline. "Ethan, I don't care about the bet. I don't care about the videos, I just need you to be there with me. His expression twisted. But that's the thing, he whispered. You do care. And I don't know how to be the man you're building online. The rain began to fall, slow and cold, each drop a reminder of everything slipping through my fingers. I opened my mouth to speak, but a distant shout broke through the moment my manager calling my name, searching for the runaway bride with millions of viewers waiting. Ethan looked toward the venue, then back at me, caught between two worlds. Jade, he said softly, voice trembling, I don't know if I can walk inside. The letter fluttered in the wind. My heart thundered. And the sky finally opened above us. Rain blurred the world into soft, trembling shapes as I stood in front of Ethan, my white dress growing heavier by the second. Water traced cold lines down my back, soaking into the fabric, pulling at the seams, making me feel small and breakable in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the steady rhythm of the storm. Like the sky was mourning, something we hadn't yet admitted was already lost. Ethan shifted his weight, his jaw tightening as he watched me shiver. He looked like he wanted to step closer, to wrap his jacket around me the way he used to, but he didn't move. I never meant for this to happen, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rain. He closed his eyes briefly, rainwater mixing with the tears he refused to let fall. I know, he murmured, but meaning well doesn't undo the damage. His words were gentle, but they hit like a stone thrown into still water ripples spreading, reaching every part of me. I felt my throat tighten as memories rushed in, us sitting on the floor eating cold pasta from the container, road trips with broken air conditioning, his hand tangled with mine under a blanket in winter. Those moments had been real, they had been ours. And somewhere along the line I had stopped protecting them. The rain fell harder, slipping between our words, soaking into every fragile space still left between us. Ethan took a shaky breath and finally looked at me, not at the dress, not at the spectacle I had become, but at me, Jade, the girl he once loved without hesitation. When did we stop being enough? He asked quietly. The question landed deep, cutting past everything I wanted to deny. I opened my mouth, but the truth caught in my throat. Somewhere between sponsorship deals, curated posts, and obsession with engagement. I had started to believe that love needed an audience to matter. I swallowed hard. I didn't stop loving you, I said, desperate to make him see it. I just forgot how to love you quietly. His expression crumpled for a split second, just enough for me to see the hurt beneath everything else. I know you try, he said, voice trembling. But every time I tell you how overwhelmed I feel, you say it's part of the job. Every time I need you to slow down, you say the algorithm won't wait. I feel like I'm competing with millions of people I never agreed to share you with. The truth of it sliced through me. All this time I'd blamed him for not keeping up. I never considered that I was the one leaving him behind. A gust of wind blew between us, scattering petals from the decorative archway set up nearby. White roses tumbled across the ground, spinning in the puddles like lost promises. Ethan watched them, his eyes distant, as if the chaos outside mirrored the chaos inside him. I thought today would help, he admitted softly. I thought maybe standing up there with you would make everything fall back into place. But then I saw the posts, the bets, the countdowns, and I realized the wedding isn't about us anymore, it's about them. Lightning flashed, illuminating the hurt carved into every line of his face. I stepped closer, my dress dragging water with each movement. Ethan, I'm scared too, I confessed, my voice cracking. But we can fix this. We can make today about us again. We can! He shook his head before I could finish. I don't think you understand how far gone this is. The rain softened briefly, as if listening. Every moment with you feels like a performance. And I don't want my marriage to be a stage. A tremor ran through me, cold and sharp. I reached for his hand, my fingers trembling, desperate to close the distance between us. For one hopeful second, he let me touch him. His palm was warm despite the rain, familiar in a way that made my heart ache. But then he gently, painfully, pulled away. The movement was soft, almost loving, but it felt like the ground had cracked beneath me. Jade, he whispered, voice breaking. I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I do. My breath hitched. The world seemed to tilt, the storm leaning into me like it wanted to swallow me whole. Then stay, I pleaded, stepping forward again. If you love me, stay. We can rewrite this, Ethan. We can start over. His eyes softened with something like longing, but the sadness in them was deeper. I want to believe that, he said, barely audible. But love can't survive in a place where it's always being watched. Behind us, near the tall glass doors of the venue, someone was calling my name again. My manager, a bridesmaid, maybe both. Their voices were muffled by the rain, but insistent, reminding me that I had promised the world a fairy tale ending today. But the man I wanted that ending with was standing in front of me, drenched and heartbroken, unable to step into the story I had built for him. I wiped my cheeks, not sure if the wetness was rain or tears. Are you really not coming inside? I asked, my voice trembling like a frayed thread. Ethan looked toward the building, then down at his hands, then finally at me. The hesitation in his eyes was a blade, slicing hope from my grasp. I don't know, he admitted. I want to. God, I want to. But I don't know how to walk into a room full of cameras and say vows meant for the woman I loved before all this. His words hit harder than any storm. The woman he loved before all this, before the filters, before the followers, before the bet that turned our future into entertainment. I took another step toward him, refusing to let the space between us grow. Look at me, I whispered. Please. He lifted his eyes slowly, rain clinging to his lashes. I'm still her, I insisted, my voice breaking. I'm still the girl who burned pancakes. I'm still the girl who fell asleep on your shoulder. I just lost myself for a while. A muscle in his jaw twitched as he searched my face. For a moment, I thought he might reach for me again. But then something behind his eyes shuddered. Doubt, fear, exhaustion. Then find yourself again, he said quietly. And when you do, maybe you'll find me too. Before I could respond, thunder cracked overhead, so loud it felt like the sky itself was splitting. Ethan flinched, taking an involuntary step back. The distance between us grew in an instant, wide enough to feel final. My heart lurched in my chest. Ethan, don't go, I begged. But he only shook his head, eyes filled with sorrow so deep it hollowed me out. If I walk inside right now, he whispered, it won't be for the right reasons. It's turned slightly, just enough for the world to pull him away from me. My breath stopped, suspended in the cold air, waiting for him to come back, to change his mind, to do anything other than walk into the storm gathering behind him. But he didn't move forward. He didn't move back. Stood there, caught between the life we had and the life he couldn't live anymore. And then, through the sound of the rain and thunder and the frantic beating of my heart, my phone buzzed in my hand. A notification, then another, then dozens. The bet. The live stream countdown. The audience waiting to see whether my groom would show up. I looked down at the glowing screen, the numbers climbing, the comments flooding, in laughing, guessing, cheering, speculating. When I looked up again, Ethan was watching the phone in my hand, not me. His shoulders slumped. His mouth tightened in resignation, and something inside him seemed to finally break. Jade, he said softly, this is exactly what I mean. The rain softened into a steady whisper as if the storm itself were exhausted from holding the weight of our unraveling. Ethan stepped back another inch, barely noticeable, but enough to make my heart seize. I lowered the phone slowly, my fingers numb around it, my pulse thundering in my ears. It's just a notification, I tried to say, but even I didn't believe the words. The glow from the screen still reflected faintly in my eyes. A reminder of the world I had chosen again and again, even when it pulled me away from the man standing in front of me. Ethan exhaled shakily, rubbing at his forehead like he was fighting a headache that had been building for months. Do you hear yourself? He asked, his voice soft but breaking at the edges. You're standing in your wedding dress, crying in the rain, and your first instinct is to check your phone. That's not love, Jade. That's something else. I swallowed hard, feeling the burn of truth spreading through me like a bruise. "That's not fair," I whispered, but the protest sounded small, childish. Ethan shook his head gently. "Maybe not. But it's real." I stepped toward him again, rain dripping from the ends of my hair, pooling at my feet. "Then tell me what to do," I pleaded. "Tell me how to fix this. I'll shut everything down. I'll delete the posts. I'll cancel the live stream. Just tell me what you need." He looked at me with an expression so full of sorrow that it made my breath tremble. "I need you to choose me before you choose them," he said quietly. "But I don't want to force you to make that choice. I don't want to be the villain in your story. I don't want you to resent me every time you miss a sponsorship because you chose us instead." The wind lifted the edges of my veil, wrapping it gently against his arm as though trying to pull us together. He didn't brush it away. He looked at it with a tenderness that cracked something inside me. "Do you remember," he said softly, "the night we danced in the kitchen? The power had gone out, and you lit candles everywhere. You were wearing those ridiculous pajamas with stars on them." A small, trembling smile tugged at my lips. "You twirled me until I fell into the counter," I murmured. He nodded, a faint warmth ghosting his expression. "He laughed so hard you snorted. That was my favorite version of you. Not the girl online, not the influencer, just you." His voice faltered. "I haven't seen that version of you in months." The words hit harder than any insult could have. Because he wasn't wrong. I had traded softness for perfection, authenticity for performance, quiet moments for curated ones. Somewhere between the first viral video and the engagement announcement, I had become a brand instead of a person. I wrapped my arms around myself, the fabric of my dress cold and heavy against my skin. "I miss her too," I confessed, my voice cracking. "But I don't know how to get back to her." Ethan looked at me for a long moment, rain dripping from his hair. "Maybe you can't," he said gently. "Not while the entire world is watching." Another muffled call echoed from the venue behind us. My name, urgent, confused. I felt the pressure of the moment squeeze my lungs. "They're waiting," I whispered. He nodded. "I know." I turned toward the venue, then back to him, torn in half. "Please," I begged. "Don't make this decision right now. Walk inside with me. We can tell them the ceremony is delayed. We can talk, just the two of us. Please, Ethan. Don't walk away." His eyes softened, and for a fleeting second, I believed he might say yes. That we might step inside together, dripping rainwater onto the marble floors, telling the cameras to leave, reclaiming this day for ourselves. But then a sudden burst of laughter echoed from the wedding party inside, bright, oblivious, recorded by someone's phone. The sound floated through the air and hit him like a blow. I saw his decision form in real time, the moment hope slipped through his fingers. Ethan took one step back, then another. My chest constricted, the panic rising so fast it left me breathless. "Don't," I choked out. But he shook his head slowly, heartbreak etched into every line of his face. "If I walk inside right now," he said, "I'll be doing it for the cameras, not for us." He turned away. Just like that. The man I loved, the man I built a future with, took a step toward the parking lot. My world lurched. "Ethan!" I cried, my voice tearing through the storm. He stopped, but only for a moment. He didn't turn around. He looked up at the sky, rain running down the sides of his face like tears he was too proud to show me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The wind carried the words away almost instantly, but I felt them like a knife. I ran after him, my dress dragging through the puddles, the cold biting into my legs. "Ethan, please!" I reached out and grabbed his arm, desperate, shaking. He froze beneath my touch, but he didn't look back. "Tell me what you want," I begged. "Please, tell me what I can do." His voice trembled. "I want you," he said. "I always have. But I don't want this life, and right now, I can't have one without losing the other." Lightning flashed again, and for a heartbeat, everything paused. The rain, my breath, his resolve. I felt his arm soften beneath my hand, like part of him wanted to turn around, to hold me the way he used to. But then my phone buzzed again. Once. Twice. Repeatedly. The vibration against my palm shattered the moment. Ethan heard it. His shoulders stiffened. And this time, when he pulled his arm away, he didn't do it gently. He turned, walked to his car, opened the door, and got inside. "No," I whispered, the word barely audible as the engine started. "No, no, no." The headlights flashed across my face. For a split second, I saw him through the windshield, his hands gripping the wheel, his expression twisted in pain. He looked at me one last time, something pleading in his eyes, and then he backed out of the parking space. "Ethan!" My scream broke in the rain as his car rolled away, slow at first, then faster, the taillights glowing red through the storm. I stumbled forward, my heels slipping on the wet pavement, but I couldn't catch him. I couldn't stop him. I could only watch as he disappeared into the gray curtain of rain, leaving me standing alone in my soaked wedding dress, clutching a letter that felt heavier than the entire world. Behind me, someone opened the venue doors. Voices rising in alarm as they saw the empty parking space where the groom was supposed to be. Cameras followed. Phones lifted. And I realized, with a hollow ache spreading through my chest, that the bet was no longer a game. It had become the ending of my own love story. I stood there long after Ethan's car disappeared, frozen in the rain like a photograph no one would ever frame. My veil clung to my back, heavy and dripping. And my dress, once pristine, was now soaked through, hugging my skin like a reminder of every choice that had led me here. Behind me, voices sharpened, footsteps scrambled, and then the world I had built, the one made of cameras, content, and curated dreams came rushing toward me. "Jade? Oh my God, what happened? Where's Ethan? Are you okay?" Phones lifted without hesitation, lenses focusing on my trembling hands, my ruined makeup, my empty gaze. I could hear shutters clicking beneath the storm, recording the exact moment my fairy tale collapsed. I wanted to scream at them to stop, to give me space, to let me grieve privately the way normal people did. But normal had abandoned me long ago, traded for follower counts and sponsorship deals. My manager reached me first, breathless and wide-eyed. "Jade, honey, we need to get you inside. We can salvage this. Maybe we delay the ceremony, tell them you're having a moment. But we need to control the narrative, the narrative." Even now, especially now, it was always about the narrative. I felt something inside me twist painfully, but I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. So she wrapped an arm around me and guided me back toward the venue, my steps slow and uneven as my dress dragged through puddles. The world inside was warm, bright, loud. I blinked against the sudden glare of chandeliers and ring lights. People swarmed me, bridesmaids crying, makeup artists staring, assistants whispering into headsets. And then someone said the words that made my stomach collapse into itself. "Is the live stream still on?" I don't remember who asked. It didn't matter. What mattered was that half a dozen heads turned toward me, waiting to see whether the bride with millions of followers would give her audience the spectacle they were tuning in for. The groom arriving late, the emotional reunion, the dramatic twist, the perfect resolution. They were waiting for a storyline I had promised but could no longer deliver. My throat burned. "Turn it off," I whispered. A stunned silence followed. My manager blinked repeatedly. "Jade, sweetheart, the audience is enormous. We've never had numbers like this. If you go live, turn it off." Something in my voice, cold, shaking, barely tethered, made everyone pause. My manager swallowed hard and nodded at one of the assistants. "End the stream," she said reluctantly. And with that, the countdown, the bets, the comments, all the noise died. I felt the absence of it like a sudden release of pressure, like taking a breath after being underwater too long. But the relief was short-lived. The room seemed to tilt, my knees going weak. Someone caught my elbow, and I found myself sinking onto a nearby chair. My dress pooled around me, heavy and wilted like a drowned flower. One of my bridesmaids crouched in front of me, tears in her eyes. "Jade, what do you need? What happened out there?" I opened my mouth, but my voice was trapped somewhere deep inside me, buried under the weight of Ethan's last words. If I walk inside right now, it won't be for the right reasons. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too full, too loud, too bright. Every face staring at me blended into one overwhelming blur. Someone pressed a warm towel into my hands. Someone else started blotting my face with trembling sympathy. But none of it touched the ache spreading through my chest. "Everyone, give her space," my manager commanded, but people hovered still, eyes wide with concern, or maybe curiosity. After all, a bride abandoned at her own wedding was the kind of drama that went viral. And somewhere deep in me, something broke at that realization. I pushed to my feet abruptly, swaying. "I need a minute," I said, not waiting for permission. I stepped past them, past the lights, past the flowers, past the expectations. I found a door at the back of the hallway and slipped out again, this time into a quiet side garden behind the venue. The rain had softened to a mist, clinging to the petals of roses and the dark leaves of manicured bushes. The air smelled like wet earth and heartbreak. I leaned against a stone column, closing my eyes. The silence here was thin but real, a fragile thread I clung to with shaking hands. My thoughts swirled in tangled loops. The letter. Ethan's face when I asked him to stay. The moment he turned away. The look in his eyes just before he closed the car door. And worst of all, the truth behind everything, that I had built a life too loud for love to survive. A soft rustling sound pulled me back. I opened my eyes to see my sister Emily stepping into the garden. She looked hesitant, as if afraid one wrong word might cause me to crumble completely. "Jade?" she whispered. Emily and I hadn't always been close. My career kept me busy, and her quiet existence didn't fit the shiny narrative I often portrayed online. But right now she was exactly the person I needed. She approached slowly, her steps gentle, her eyes warm. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. The apology cracked something inside me. My chin trembled and I sank down onto a stone bench, my legs unable to hold the weight of the day any longer. "He left," I whispered, the words sounding unreal even as they left my mouth. "He really left." Emily sat beside me, her hand finding mine. The warmth of her palm grounded me in a way nothing else had. "Jade, what happened?" I stared ahead at the glistening garden, my voice a broken thread. "I did this," I said. "I turned our relationship into something it wasn't. I thought I could handle it. I thought he could handle it. But the wedding became a show, and he doesn't want a life that feels staged." Emily's thumb brushed my knuckles. "You love him." The truth struck hard enough to knock breath from my chest. I do, I whispered. But I loved the attention too. And I didn't realize how loud everything got until he couldn't hear me anymore. We sat there for a long moment, the quiet holding us gently. Then Emily asked the question I had been avoiding since Ethan drove away. "Do you want to go after him?" The breath I took felt sharp, painful. I wanted to say yes. To run into the storm, to find him, to beg him to come back. But something deeper, heavier, whispered the truth. "I don't know where he's going," I said. "And I don't know if he wants to be found." Emily squeezed my hand. "Maybe he just needs space. Maybe he needs time to breathe." Time, space. These were currencies I had never given freely, not to myself, not to Ethan. I existed in a world where everything had to be immediate, constant, visible. The idea of waiting, of letting things unfold in silence, felt foreign, terrifying. "I don't know how to fix this," I admitted, my voice cracking. If he had stayed, if he had given me one more minute, I would have told him everything. That I'm sorry. That I love him. That I would give up all of it for him. Emily's gaze softened. "Maybe you still can." I shook my head, tears spilling down my cheeks. He didn't just walk away from the wedding. He walked away from who I became. The truth of it hollowed me out. Thunder rolled faintly in the distance, fading now as the storm began to drift away. The sky brightened slightly, clouds thinning to pale wisps. It felt cruel, like the world was returning to normal while mine remained shattered. Emily wrapped her arm around me, letting my head rest on her shoulder. I closed my eyes, listening to the soft patter of the last raindrops on the garden leaves. For the first time since the morning began, I allowed myself to be still. to feel everything instead of performing it. Somewhere deep inside me, beneath the heartbreak and the noise and the ruined wedding dress, a quiet thought formed, small, fragile, but real. I had lost the man I loved. But maybe in the ruins I could start to find myself again. The garden felt like a world suspended outside of time, quiet, heavy, unreal. I stayed there long after Emily's arm slipped gently from around my shoulders so I could breathe on my own again. The air was cool and damp, the stone beneath me cold enough to seep through the layers of my dress, but I didn't move. I didn't want to. Moving meant facing what waited inside: questions, confusion, disappointment, a shattered ceremony, and a future I had decorated too perfectly to see it breaking. Emily stood and brushed the rain from her dress. "I'll give you some space," she whispered, squeezing my shoulder before stepping back toward the venue. "Come find me if you need anything." I nodded without looking up, hearing her footsteps fade into the soft hush of the garden. When I was finally alone, the silence pressed in on me, not suffocating, but strange, like a room I hadn't walked into in years. My hands trembled as I unfolded Ethan's letter again. The paper was wrinkled now, thin and weak from the rain, but the ink, his handwriting, familiar and intimate, remained dark and steady. I traced my finger along the curve of each letter, wanting to absorb the warmth of the moments we had lived together before everything became loud. I need time. I need to step away before the pieces of us disappear completely. I'm sorry this is happening today. I read the words again and again until they blurred, until they felt like echoes of every moment I had ignored his pleas to slow down. I remembered each time he tried to pull me back into our private world, the nights he asked me to put my phone away during dinner, the mornings he held me close while I anxiously refreshed my analytics, the quiet look in his eyes when I told him a brand deal mattered just this once. That once had become 100 times, and each time had carved a deeper mark on him until finally there was nothing left to carve. A faint breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the soft, distant sound of people inside the venue trying to figure out what to do next. Someone was crying, maybe a bridesmaid. Someone else was muttering angrily about contracts. I closed my eyes, wishing the world away. But then I heard a softer sound. My name? Jade? It wasn't Emily this time. It wasn't my manager. It wasn't anyone from the wedding party. When I looked up, I saw someone I hadn't expected. My father. He never liked crowds. Never liked cameras. He had arrived late that morning to avoid the chaos. He stood there now at the garden entrance, his suit slightly wrinkled, his salt and pepper hair damp from the rain. He looked at me the way fathers do, when they already know their child's heart is breaking before a word is spoken. I tried to smile, but my face crumpled instead. He crossed the garden without hesitation and sat beside me. His presence warm and steady, grounding me in a way I didn't realize I desperately needed. "Emily told me you were out here," he said quietly. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then the words spilled out, small and raw. He left. My father nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that outcome long before I had. "I saw him drive off," he said. "He looked lost." A sharp breath escaped me. "He said he can't marry me like this, that he doesn't know how to be part of my world." Dad's brow furrowed with gentle concern. "Do you want him to be part of that world?" The question hit deeper than I expected. I stared at the ground, watching a droplet of water slide down the petal of a rose and fall silently into the dirt. "I wanted him with me," I whispered. "I thought that meant he had to love the things I love, the way I live, the way I share things. And what about the things he loves?" My father asked, his voice soft but firm. "The quiet moments? The privacy? The simplicity?" A lump formed in my throat. I didn't realize how much he needed that, I admitted. I didn't realize how much I was taking away from him. Dad sighed gently, leaning back on the bench. "Love isn't just about sharing your world with someone," he said. "Sometimes it's about protecting theirs, even when it doesn't look like yours." His words sank into me like rain into dry earth. Slow, deep, necessary. I wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand, smudging what little makeup remained. "Do you think he'll come back?" My father didn't answer right away. He watched the shifting clouds, the soft mist settling over the garden. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that felt both comforting and painful. "If the two of you are meant to find each other again, you will, but not today. Today, you need to find yourself first." My chest tightened, because deep down, I knew he was right. I had lost myself in a world that rewarded perfection over presence, highlights over heart. And in chasing that version of myself, I had left Ethan behind. Dad placed a hand over mine. "Come inside when you're ready. We'll take care of everything. You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to explain." "I don't know what to tell them," I whispered. "You tell them the truth," he said simply. "The truth is enough." His words lingered as he stood and walked back toward the venue, leaving me alone once more with the whispering rain and the hollow ache of what today had become. I closed my eyes again, letting the soft drizzle touch my skin. I inhaled deeply, feeling the cold air fill my lungs, stretch my chest, anchor me. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about how I looked. I wasn't thinking about the lighting or the angle or the caption. I wasn't thinking about how this moment would play online. I was just existing, hurting, breathing, living. Minutes passed, maybe hours, before I finally stood. My dress was ruined, my makeup streaked, my hair tangled with raindrops, but none of it mattered anymore. I walked back toward the venue slowly, each step heavy but deliberate. Inside, the noise dimmed to a soft hum. People looked at me with wide eyes and open mouths. My manager hurried forward, her expression tense. "Jade, sweetheart, the press is already asking questions. We need a statement, something controlled." "No," I said quietly, but with an unexpected firmness. "Not controlled, not polished, not curated." She blinked, thrown off. "Then, what do you want to say?" I looked around at the crowd, bridesmaids, vendors, assistants, distant relatives, people with phones in their hands, people waiting for a headline, people waiting for a spectacle, people waiting for the bride to explain why the groom had vanished. The words rose inside me like a tide, steady, painful, honest. I want to tell them the truth. And for the first time that day, my heart didn't feel like it was collapsing. It felt like it was beginning to speak. When I stepped back into the venue, everything fell silent, as if the room itself were holding its breath. The chandeliers glowed softly above us, scattering warm light over the wilting flowers. The half-emptied champagne flutes, the hopeful decorations that no longer had a purpose. Eyes followed me as I walked, every step echoing across the polished floor. My ruined dress dragged behind me like a ghost of the life I thought I'd have by now. My manager opened her mouth to speak, but I lifted a hand gently, not to silence her, just to steady myself. My voice was barely there when I said, "Can someone get me a microphone?" A ripple of confusion moved through the room, but someone quickly handed me one. It felt heavy in my hand. Too heavy. This wasn't a sponsorship announcement. It wasn't a product reveal. It wasn't a planned moment polished by rehearsals. This was the first time in years that I held a microphone with nothing prepared to say. My father stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching me with quiet strength. My sister rested her hand over her heart. My bridesmaid sniffled softly. And somewhere in the back I knew phones were raised, discreetly recording. But for once, I didn't care. I swallowed hard, tasting salt and rain. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice trembling. "I know today was supposed to be a celebration, a fairy tale. And I know many of you came here expecting a ceremony that won't be happening." A few people exchanged glances, but no one spoke. The stillness in the room pressed gently against me, urging me forward. "I want to tell you the truth," I said. My throat tightened, but I pushed through it. I built a life online, and somewhere along the way I forgot how to live one offline. A soft murmur passed through the crowd, but I didn't stop. I turned my relationship with Ethan into content. Not intentionally at first, it just happened. Every milestone became a post, every argument became something to hide. Every joy became something to showcase. I didn't realize how much that took from him, or how much it took from us. Tears slipped down my cheeks, warm against the cold dampness of my skin. When I made that bet online, I thought it was fun. I thought it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless to him. And it wasn't harmless to us. I didn't see it until today. A woman in the front row dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Someone else sniffled. The room softened. I want to say this clearly, I continued. Ethan didn't walk away because he doesn't love me. He walked away because he does. And because I didn't know how to protect the parts of us that should have stayed private. The words trembled out of me, raw and heavy. But they felt true. The truest words I'd spoken in years. I'm not angry at him, I whispered. I'm proud of him. Proud that he had the strength to walk away from something that no longer felt real, even if it breaks me. My voice cracked, a sob slipping out before I could swallow it. Even if it destroys me. He deserved a love that wasn't shared with millions of strangers. My manager pressed a hand to her forehead. Someone in the back lowered their phone in slow motion, as if realizing this moment wasn't meant to be captured. I took a slow breath, steadying the shaking in my hands. I'm sorry, I said softly, though I wasn't sure who I was addressing, my guests, my family, or myself. I'm sorry for every part of me that thought validation had to come from outside. I'm sorry to the people who came here today expecting joy. And I'm sorry to the man I love, who deserved better than the version of me I became. Silence, stillness, then, unexpectedly someone clapped. Just one person at first, then another. Then the room filled with gentle, supportive applause that washed over me like warm rain, not loud, not explosive, just soft, kind, human. It didn't fix anything. It stitched a small piece of me back together. I lowered the microphone, my breath shaky but steadying. My father stepped forward and took the mic from my hand before I could drop it. He whispered, "I'm proud of you," and kissed the top of my head. My sister wrapped her arms around me, her tears mixing with mine. The room slowly dispersed, people speaking in hushed tones, offering quiet condolences. No one was angry. No one blamed me. And that forgiveness earned but real hurt almost as much as everything else. Eventually I slipped back into the side hallway, hearing the distant sounds of guests leaving, staff cleaning, decorations being taken down. The venue was returning to its normal rhythm while I stood motionless, unsure of my next step. When I stepped outside again, the storm had passed. The air was cool and fresh, the sky washed in soft silver light. My dress was ruined, my makeup smudged, my hair tangled, but for the first time I didn't fix any of it. I let myself be messy, imperfect, human. I sat on the stone steps at the entrance of the venue, hugging my knees to my chest. The world felt painfully quiet. Without Ethan beside me, without notifications buzzing, without cameras waiting, I felt the weight of a silence I had forgotten how to carry. And then my phone, lifeless until now, buzzed softly in my hand. I stared at the screen. A message. His name. Ethan. My breath caught. A rush of fear and hope surged through me. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. The message was short, only 4 words. But those 4 words stole the breath from my lungs. I made it home. His message lingered on my screen, glowing softly in the fading light. I made it home. 4 words. 4 simple, steady words that held the weight of everything we had been, everything we had lost, and everything we might never get back. My heart clenched as I stared at them, my breath shallow, my fingers trembling. Home. He was safe. He hadn't run far, just far enough to breathe. My first instinct was to reply immediately, to spill everything I hadn't been able to say while he was standing in front of me. But I stopped myself. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside me, swirling with guilt and longing and questions I didn't know how to answer. I pressed the phone to my chest, closing my eyes. The night air cooled the last of the rain on my skin. Minutes passed, maybe more. I wasn't ready to speak, and maybe he wasn't ready to hear me. But the fact that he'd messaged it all meant something. A small thread still connected us, fragile but unbroken. When the venue finally emptied, when the last guests drifted away with sympathetic glances, when the staff began pulling down the decorations one ribbon at a time, I stood. I looked back at the place where I was supposed to be married today, where thousands of people had expected a spectacle, where I had expected a perfect moment I didn't deserve. Instead, the quiet settled over everything like a blanket, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel all of it. The shame, the sorrow, the longing, the truth. I walked slowly to my car, each step heavy but grounding. When I closed the door behind me, the interior felt too quiet, too intimate. My reflection stared back at me from the rearview mirror, mascara streaks, wet hair, trembling lips. Not the bride I showed the internet, not the woman millions admired. Just Jade, broken, aching, stripped of filters. It was time to go home too. The drive back was a blur of city lights smeared by drying tears. My dress clung uncomfortably to my body, the fabric cold and stiff from the rain. I loosened the corset at a red light, exhaling for what felt like the first time all day. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to see the meticulously staged backdrop I had built for videos. I didn't want the glow of ring lights or the perfect arrangement of plants or the vase of flowers sent by brands. I wanted darkness, not out of sadness, but because it felt honest. In the quiet, my phone buzzed again. My breath caught. "Ethan, let me know you're okay." My throat tightened. Even in his heartbreak, even after walking away from the wedding, he still cared. He still wanted to know I made it home too. I sat on the couch, the ruined dress bunching awkwardly beneath me, and typed slowly, "I'm home." I didn't add anything else. Not yet. My hands hovered over the keyboard wanting to say more. "I'm sorry, please come back, I love you, can we fix this?" But those words belonged to a version of us that needed healing first. I sent nothing more. Seconds passed, then minutes. I set the phone beside me, curling my knees to my chest. My apartment felt unfamiliar, like a stage after the audience leaves, props still in place but the magic gone. When the phone buzzed again, I inhaled sharply. Another message flashed across the screen. "Did you talk about what happened?" My chest twisted. He was watching. Not the live stream, not the drama. He was watching me. Still connected, still unsure, still caring from a distance he had needed to take. I typed back slowly. "Yes." I told them the truth. Another buzz. He answered almost immediately. "Thank you." Cool words. Tender, heavy. A pause filled the air between us, silent but full. Then another message arrived, shorter than the last, but sharper somehow. I wish things were different. The tightness in my chest spread, warm and painful. I swallowed hard before typing. "Me too." This time, he didn't reply right away. I leaned back, letting the silence settle. It didn't feel cold or cruel, it felt like space, like breath, like the beginning of something honest, even if that beginning wasn't the one I had planned. I stood and walked to the window. The storm clouds had thinned, revealing a quiet sky streaked with silver. The kind of sky that follows destruction, a sky that promises nothing except the chance to rebuild. My phone buzzed one last time. I reached for it with trembling hands. When I saw the message, tears blurred the words instantly. "I'm not giving up on us. I just can't come back to that world. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'm here." A sob escaped me, soft and fragile. Not because everything was fixed, not because he was coming back tomorrow, but because after everything, after the wedding that never happened, after the bets and the pressure and the storm, he still believed in a version of us that could exist outside the noise. I typed through tears. I want that too. No filters, no cameras, no audience, just truth, just space. Just two people who lost their way and might one day find each other again. I set the phone down gently, wiping my cheeks as a shaky breath left my lungs. The ache in my chest was still there, sharp and real, but beneath it, deep, fragile, and new, something warm flickered. Not a perfect ending, not a fairy tale, but hope. Quiet, human, imperfect hope. And maybe that was enough for him now.